Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 25. Feels real good to get all the way up to 25. Thank you all for being here, especially y'all who've been here since the beginning, especially y'all who've been here since before this podcast even started. This podcast was kind of a big risk for me, but really just a big, giant experiment. I wanted to try this format out to get my thoughts out there, to talk about what I believe in, to help people in the way that we formulate ideas here, and talk about some of my experiences and how it's helped me. And today, on episode 25, this one's going to be a bit different. I didn't plan for it to be this way, but I wanted to talk a bit about my friend who passed away this last week, and also how we truly live before we die. Like, how do we live life to the fullest? And so this is going to be a bit hard for me, still kind of fresh. And I was considering not doing this and trying to find something else to talk about, but it's just been on my heart for the last few days. And I felt like I just wanted to talk about it. And I also felt like this podcast would be a cool place to talk about it, because I want to be able to not just talk about things I learned a long time ago, but things that I'm actively learning right now. And that's what's been unique about this podcast, is to be able to express things happening right here, right now, without thinking too much about getting all the wording right, because I'm a writer. And so I have other places where I put more effort into getting all the wording right. Like my book, we got to plug this before everything. The book I just finished writing, called You Don't Need a Calling, an anti-capitalist manifesto for a life of purpose. Go pre-order it. It comes out next June. And later, I'm going to talk a bit about something that I wrote in the book that relates to all this. And so let's just get right into it. Thank you all for being here for this kind of different episode. And before we get started, I just want y'all to know I'm fine, I'm chill, and I got a good community. So this podcast is never like a cry for help. I just don't want y'all to worry. You could care, of course, and I appreciate those who care, but just this is just me expressing what's going on. So let's think here. I think it was Friday. I got a call from my friend, and he said he got a call from his mom, who heard a rumor when she got a call from her mom all the way in Washington. We live in Santa Maria, California, by the way. And that said she heard a rumor that our friend David died. And she didn't know if it was true. And she was calling her son, trying to figure out, trying to get him to find out. He didn't know what to do, so he called me. First time I heard of it, and I tried calling our friend David. David is the one I'm talking about. Went straight to a voice message saying this number isn't available. Then I checked Facebook and had to do this hardcore filtered search through Facebook posts to find something. And it was his brother saying that he unexpectedly passed away the night before, and to let them process it privately, but we still don't know how. It just happened. I think he was about to turn 54. And this guy, David, what made him unique was that, and what made him unique in my life, is that I've known him since I was a little kid. He was a local fourth grade teacher, so a lot of people knew him from that. But he also helped in church. I knew him because he was one of the volunteers in kids' church, and then he was one of the volunteer leaders in the youth group. And then later at that church, I ended up becoming the minister of the youth group. And he was one of my leaders, like underneath me, which was interesting to experience. And like underneath, like, I mean, yeah, part of the group of leaders that I was directing. And so then when I left that church in 2017, that whole experience, I've talked about it plenty of times before, but just real quick, that me leaving that was me leaving ministry and the job I had at that church. And it was me leaving all of evangelicalism all in one move. And when I left, I felt like God was calling me to something else. And I was still a Christian, but just more inspired by other branches of Christianity. And I started being honest about everything I believed on YouTube and started building this whole thing that led to this podcast and me writing books and doing all this other stuff. But when I left in 2017, I lost relationship with like everyone, like hundreds of people that I was connected to in that church, and also other churches in the district and throughout the state and other churches in the city. And it made sense. I mean, from the perspective of a lot of my old ministry peers, the path that I followed was one that was kind of viewed as heretical, like someone who just went astray off of God's path, who got, maybe they think I got carried away with too much thinking and reading, when really I felt like I just cared a lot about the truth, and I was exploring a lot because I wanted the truth, and I ended up finding all these other perspectives that made me realize the particular Christian perspective I grew up with was just a small corner of the larger global historic Christian tradition. And so, and I would say the same thing about all of evangelicalism, which is a much larger category, which is why I usually just talk about evangelicalism. I don't just talk about that church, because the problems of that church isn't just that church. And anyway, David was the only one. Well, there's three people. The two other ones are my friends Devin and Isaiah. Isaiah is the one who called me, and they were in the youth group when I was leading the youth group, and after I left, shortly after they graduated, and they ended up leaving that church too soon after. But David was still there, and David, yeah, those three were the only ones. And afterward, I still hung out with him, and when I left, he understood why I left. There was a few people who, when I said I was leaving and the reasons why, they expected it, really, and they understood some of my disagreements with some of the theological and political stuff, and even some of them low-key shared some of those disagreements, but were on their own path. And David also shared some of those disagreements, but I feel like the stakes weren't as high for him because he wasn't in this ministry position. He was one of those people that volunteered a lot and helped a lot, and would even teach kids church and stuff. But it was, but he was never trying to follow this like clergy path. And I mean, his actual job was being a fourth grade teacher. But he, on top of that, also was a photographer, local photographer, who he would do photography for parents for their kids and like football games and soccer and softball and all that, and senior photos and family events and other events. And he was also a magician. He did magic for the kids. And I remembered as a very little kid, the trick so many of us always remember is that classic paper bag trick where it's like, here's an invisible ball. Let me throw you this invisible ball. Catch it. Okay, now throw the invisible ball back to me. And then you hear the ball, and you even see it, like you hear the ball go into the paper bag. It goes, into the paper bag. But low key, don't tell anybody, but the way you do that is as you're holding the bag, you snap your fingers, and so it sounds like a ball is landing in it. Don't tell anybody that though. Don't keep that low key. And but that was like mind blowing as a kid. And he was always super supportive of everything that I did. I mean, as a teenager, I cared a lot about art, music, writing, just creating things. And I got into making music when I was around 14, and he was super supportive of that. And then I started recording music at my house and putting out albums and doing little shows locally. And it was kind of like Christian rap, but over time it became more just like rap about life and stuff, which is a typical path a lot of Christian rappers take. And my senior year, my youth pastor met this guy at a youth camp, and David helped with a bunch of the youth camps where a bunch of the churches in the larger district would go to. And over in Big Bear in Southern California, Big Bear Mountains. And so my youth pastor met a guy at that camp who owned a studio in Ventura, I think. And the guy said, hey, this guy, Damon, who I performed at some of those camps too, and that was fun. He's like, this guy, Damon, should come to my studio and record. And here's how much I charge. And I don't remember how much it was, maybe 100, maybe 200 at most. But I told David, and David suggested that he pay for it. He was just super down to pay for this studio session. And so me and my youth pastor and my other friend, Elijah, drove down. And the way I did it back then, I would have these beats. And in that case, it was a bunch of beats I made, and I would write the songs. And so I was ready to just record 12 songs in one go very, very quickly. And I think we had like a few hour session, and that's all we needed. We did it. The guy mastered it right there, and I had an album. I recorded quite a few albums back then, but that was my life. That's all I cared about back then, was music and film. And so when that album came out, I wanted to record a music video. And so I had this vision for one of the songs that was about some nerdy things, very nerdy vibe, a lot of nerdy references like superheroes and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff. And I had this vision for all these costumes for people to wear. And it was close to Halloween. And so Spirit Halloween store had a bunch of costumes. And so I told David, and David said he was down to buy the costumes. So we went to the store together. He paid for costumes and props. And I was like, I think this means we could technically list you as a producer, because I think that's what a producer means. Somebody who like gives money for funds a project. And so he was the producer of the music video. And after that, we recorded a few other music videos, and he came and helped with that. And he made like a little cameo in another one. And he was just super supportive of all of that. And then after that, when I was 19, I got into ministry and felt like God called me to be a pastor, shifted my whole life's path. And because I thought I was just going to do something in music or film. And then I just got really, really passionate about all this stuff I was learning as I was developing my own faith perspective, reading the Bible for myself, reading all these books about the Bible and about Christianity and Christian history and philosophy and all this stuff, because I felt like it was my responsibility to learn these things if I'm going to teach people things. And so that path led me to pretty quickly starting this Bible study-ish small group thing with young adults. And it was very young adults, because I was like only 19. And that group was called The Hallway. My first book, The God Who Riots, behind me, was dedicated to the hallway, because that was the first place where I feel like I experienced a unique spiritual community. And I started that. It was cool. And a big part of that group was creating a space where we can ask questions and express even our doubts when it comes to faith. And some people didn't like that. We intentionally weren't attached to any specific church, because we wanted freedom to talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. And the pastor of the biggest church in Santa Maria heard a story that was completely confused and misunderstood, misinterpreted. And I had moved to Orange County for this ministry program, and the hallway kept going, but it was still like, I was still kind of part of it, and would be a part of it whenever I would visit. But there were some other guys leading it after I had left. And so it was during that period. And so this pastor called my pastor first to kind of get me in trouble, and then called me and threatened me and said that, I don't know, I tried to explain. Back then, I was young and naive enough to think, if I just explain everything, then the other person will understand everything. But some people don't want to understand, so that doesn't work. And so he came with a mission and said that we have to get adult accountability for the group, which really, I guess he meant like older 30-somethings or something. And if we don't do that, then I have to stop the group. And if I don't stop the group and I don't get adult accountability, then he said he's going to warn the town against me, pretty much. And I'm like 20 years old on the phone with this guy, the pastor of the biggest church in Santa Maria, being threatened in this way. I'm like, what? It was so surreal. That was the beginning of my anxiety attacks. My first anxiety attacks was after that phone call that I dealt with for a while. And I felt, and then I just became a mess, and I didn't know what to do. And it was a strange experience. And there was a mix of other things that were happening in my life and problems in that program I was in. And I didn't really know what to do. So I just decided to find some adult accountability. And so I hit up David. Here's sorry for the longish tangent. I promise. I promise you all, if you ever feel like I'm going on a tangent, it'll connect eventually. So, and my other friend who was leading the group at the time hit up his pastor at a different church that I didn't know, but those two guys were our adult accountability. I visited, and we had a lunch together, and I told him everything that happened. And David and this other pastor were shocked that this guy was doing that he was treating me like that. And they were saying, yeah, that wasn't right, that he did that. And they said, look, we'll be the adult accountability people, but we don't feel the need to go to the groups because we feel like we would ruin it. You guys are good on your own. Do your thing. But if you ever need someone to talk to, we're here. So I was like, cool. That checked the box, emailed this guy, got my adult accountability people, David and this other guy. And that got that pastor off my back. And I could go into a lot of intersecting stories here, but yeah, that guy ended up being fired for some really weird stuff he was doing at his church. And that So I was not the only one in the town that had problems with that guy, or that he had problems with, rather. And so, anyway, I think back to that moment a lot, and I think about how easy of an ask it was to get David to help out there, and how easily he was just so supportive and be there as a support for whatever I was asking for. And yeah, then after that, I became the youth minister dude, and he was one of the leaders, and he was great. And then I left, and he totally understood why, and we stayed friends. We hung out quite a lot after I left, and over time, what was that, 8 years ago, we slowly hung out less and less. And then COVID happened. That made it even harder to hang out with people. And then I ended up hanging out with him a couple of years ago. Me and Devin and Isaiah and David, we got sushi. And then I didn't see him for a long time. And then I saw him a couple months ago at my niece's softball game. And he was taking photos for the other team. And that was a photography gig he got. And we're like, hey, it was so good to see him. My sister, after he passed away, me and my sister talked about it. And my sister said that when she saw my reaction to seeing him, she said it was like clearly different. It was like clear, like, oh, my brother really likes this guy. And she said it like, she said it like she hadn't seen that type of reaction out of me with other people. And so we're talking for a good while, and we said we should hang out. And so, yeah, let's text, try to make it. We'd scheduled a day. He ended up being busy with something after all. So we said, let's reschedule. Ended up not rescheduling. And that was the last I talked to him. And I feel like I didn't plan to go into all these different details in this podcast episode, but I'm just expressing myself, and it's okay. It's okay. It's a podcast, as the very first episode said. So anyway, that was the last I spoke to him. And it's been interesting because I feel like it's been very slow, me processing the news. Like when my friend called me and told me, I felt like I didn't really feel anything. But I think it was mostly because I wanted to know what happened. And sometimes with those things, you feel like you can't process unless you understand, type of thing, which can end up being a trap. But I ended up just day after day after day, it's like heavier than the day before. And so that's the kind of processing I've been experiencing. And so that's what's been on my heart and the top of my mind the last few days. And it was interesting. I think about like the uniqueness of how supportive he was to everyone. Like I think about going to this funeral and seeing some of the old people that I used to know from that old church, and think about how like they probably all have no idea that me and David still talked. But who cares? Who cares what they think? And I think about the uniqueness of the way he supported so many people, so many people. He was like a local legend. A lot of people would meet him and say, "I've heard about you for years, and I always wanted to meet this David guy that so many people that I meet talk about." And so I think about how, like, I don't think anyone was supportive for me, like any friend was supportive for me, like he was. Because it's like you have in your mind some people in your life that support you. But then there's sometimes you don't realize that there's certain individuals that support you like nobody else ever did. And so, and we hadn't even talked in a long time. But I knew how solid that friendship was. And I ended up going to this recording event, this Rob Bell event. Rob Bell is this sort of spiritual teacher dude. He used to be a Christian pastor. And he wrote books. A lot of people liked them mostly because he was big on encouraging people to ask questions and to learn more outside of their perspective. And he ended up getting super canceled by the evangelical world for questioning hell in his old book, Love Wins, in 2011. And then shortly after left his church and still did the spiritual teacher thing, but from a broader perspective. And then a couple years ago, he moved to just making art and writing fiction. And it's been interesting to see his path, Rob Bell's path, and interesting to be on my own path and see just, how things evolve over time. And it's encouraging when I see other people like him be able to evolve on their own path, go from this thing to that thing to that thing, because it gives me like more security in my own evolution of, I can also go from this thing to that thing to that thing. It's okay. Other people do it. So anyway, me and my friend Colin went and saw Rob Bell record his 400th episode of his podcast. It was like a special live recording event. And it was this on Monday. And it was interesting because he was just talking a lot about like his own journey and what you'd expect of like a celebration like that. Like, when I started the podcast, I didn't think it would end up like this, and now look what it ended up as, stuff like that, which was cool. But afterward, me and Colin were talking about how hugely influential he was to so many people, but not even in the sense of thinking like him or just copying how he thinks, but just influential in the sense of encouraging people to go on their own journey. And so many people to even just start creative journeys to just read something from him, encouraging people to follow your passion and don't get bogged down by feeling like you have to do it like someone else, and to realize, this thing may have been done, but not by you. Like that just that idea alone was super helpful for me early on. And encouraged me to do all these other things that have nothing to do with what Rob Bell teaches or what he's ever taught. Even the beginning of my journey started with reading some Rob Bell books, but then seeing other people he referenced, and then seeing other people they reference, and then reading people they reference, and then just reading a bunch of different stuff. And anyway, we're talking about that. And we're bringing it back, people. We're bringing it back. My friend David kind of looks like Rob Bell, like in the face. He would not like that. Because I remember so many years ago talking to him, and he said growing up, people would tell him that he kind of looks like Rob Bell, and he didn't think so at all. David also kind of looks like Robin Williams a little bit too in the face. So just think whatever facial characteristic Rob Bell and Robin Williams share, David also shared a little bit in his face. And so me and my friend are watching Rob Bell, and throughout, he's on stage sitting in a chair with a microphone. His mom was there with a microphone too. And throughout the thing, he kept making these certain facial expressions where in a flash of a moment, it looked just like David. And it was heavy. It was like, it was a weird thing of like feeling like, oh yeah, David's gone. That's it. He's gone. And then seeing these flashes of his face in this other guy's face was heavy. It was like those flashes of moments. He was there again. And then that also got me thinking about how David was also that type of guy who influenced so many people to follow their passion, to do them, to be their unique selves, to be courageous, to also not only follow their passion, but follow their curiosity. And I think about all the things that David did, all the things David was into, all the things David was passionate about. He was just living life. He was a single guy. So he was able, that gave him a bit more freedom to do more, of course, but he did a lot of things with a lot of people, helped a lot of people, was there to support a lot of people. And having that energy in your life gives you a bit of security and hope and vision for doing all the things that you want to do, even if it may be difficult to imagine doing all the things you want to do, feeling like you don't have enough time, you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough resources. But then having people in your life who can encourage you in that way really helps. And so yeah, David was that kind of guy too. And I think of, there's this part of the book, my book that's going to come out in June, called You Don't Need a Calling, that it's about calling, purpose, but trying to stretch people's imagination around those topics. And there's a lot of talk of death in the book from different perspectives. And it's because part of the idea of calling and purpose is people feel this burden to accomplish something before they die, or to become this other better version of themselves before they die. I have on my wall behind me up there a painting, pink painting with, for the audio listeners, it's a hand doing a pinky promise with a skeleton hand. And underneath it, it says, "You're gonna die someday," or "You're going to die someday," with a little heart at the end of someday. And then in little writing, it says, "I promise!" exclamation point. That's actually the name of the first chapter of the book, by the way. You're going to die someday, I promise. My ex-girlfriend made that for me, by the way. And when I say that, I know it sounds like, oh no, was she threatening you? But no, it was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was an encouragement. Because when she made that for me many, many, many years ago, death was something we talked a lot about. It was something that I was thinking a lot about. I had almost died at one point, and it gave me a whole new perspective on my life and made me realize, like, oh yeah, I could die at any moment. I want to live this life while I'm here. I want to live this life to the fullest. And there's two ways you can interpret that impulse. One is you're going to die someday. You could die any day. So embrace this moment. Embrace the people around you. Be present and find joy just in being here while you're here. The other way is you're going to die someday. You could die at any moment. So hurry up and try to become the thing you want to become. Try to accomplish all your goals as soon as possible because you could die at any moment. Which are both based on kind of the same idea, but are also far opposites of each other. And the book is trying to get people to be free of that second version of you need to hurry up and become someone else in order to be valuable, and trying to get people to embrace that first version of realizing that actually you already are valuable, and this life is already valuable, and you have to live in the present and be present in the lives of those around you, and find purpose in the small, simple callings all around you. And so there's so I think about that, and I think about the things I want to do, things I wish to accomplish in this short life. And I think about how David probably had some other things that he wanted to accomplish. And David, I feel like, lived a very full life because he also was very radically present for so many people. And there's this other part of the book where I talk about people dying young, and I'm not going to get into all the details here. Maybe in a later video, but I just want to say this one part of that section, I talk about thinking about, like, we have this wish list of things we want to do before we die, and it usually includes these things we want to accomplish, these things we wish we could have, these things we wish we could experience before we die. And like, think about that wish list in your head, and now think about those you've loved who have died, especially those who have died early, and think about the types of things you wish that they could do but can't do anymore because they've passed away. Things you wish you could do with them. That's a much different list. That list is more like being able to spend time with the people you love, being able to experience very simple things, being able to be there for people's big moments and small moments and celebrations and tragedies. And what are the things you wish what are the things you feel like, dang, it sucks that they get to miss out on this and this and this? That's a very different list than the list we usually make when we think about all the things I wish I could accomplish before I die. And so with that in mind, I'm also using that idea to think about David too. And yeah, and there's parts of me that just want to be able to live more like David, to be supportive of others more like David. And back to what I said earlier about how David helped me with that one small group thing, and remembering how easy of an ask it was. And I want to be more of an easy ask for my close friends and family. As opposed to feeling like, oh, I don't know if I could ask Damon. I don't want to. I don't want to bother him. I don't want. He's probably too busy. He'll probably be annoyed or something. Whatever people may think. I don't want to be a burden or whatever. I'd rather be more like David and for people to feel like, oh yeah, Damon would definitely be down to help. Or Damon would definitely be down to be there for me for this. I know I could count on Damon. And I feel like over the last few years, I've become less of that. This book stuff was super all-consuming. And I experienced it with my friends. So some of my very good friends have told me how they felt like they couldn't hit me up at different times because they didn't want to bother me. They thought I was busy. They thought it would be too much or whatever. And sometimes it was too much. But in thinking about the type of life I want to live and how to live life to the fullest and how to truly live before you die, one of those ways I think that I would like to practice is being that kind of supportive friend that people see as someone that they could easily count on, like David. And so there's a bit for y'all. There's a bit of my thoughts. And we'll see what the next podcast is about. His funeral is going to be in a couple of weeks, but yeah, we'll have another podcast next week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to say. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this unique episode. And thank you all again for being here all the way up until episode 25. I'll see you all on episode 26. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.